the planet. If you think about a planet and you expand your thinking, you start to look at the planet Earth as a piece of galactic real estate, right? It's a piece of real estate. And when it comes to real estate, there's a value to it. There's a price to it. It's hard as a planet to base the value or the price according to square footage, because there's a lot of square footage. And it wouldn't take into account what's on the planet, which is people, which are resources inside the planet. There are corporations. There is technology, right? There are countries and languages and culture and leaderships all in place upon this galactic real estate in space. I mean, basically Earth, the planet, is a giant ball of rock circling a giant ball of fire. That's basically where we live. We live on a giant ball of rock that orbits a giant ball of fire, okay? A fireplace. And upon this Earth, upon this planet, is where we come to experience and learn. But if a planet is a piece of real estate, there has to be some owner. But it's a little more than a real estate. As I've said, it has all these components. It has population, it has history, productivity, it has resources, it has leadership, it has countries, it has technology, it has knowledge. So if we kind of want to value a planet, we have to think of it more like a corporation, a large corporation. And inside a corporation, when you buy a corporation, there are departments. There's the finance, there's accounting, there's sales, manufacturing, there's overseas sales. A company, right? There's the design, there's the human resources. All of these departments within a company. So compare the corporation to a planet. A department begins to look like a country, right? Again, we're thinking large scale. We're thinking planetary scale. So it's a new way of thinking for most people, because we're not used to thinking that somebody owns a planet. I don't think anybody's really talked about that before. We're not used to thinking that a planet can be sold or purchased. And we'll talk about sort of the value in a little bit. But a planet is this piece of real estate. It's just a large corporation. It's a productivity center. Or we could say it's a profit center, that the owners want to see profit. They want to see productivity. They want the planet to grow, right? And it takes, because when you're dealing with planets, you have to alter the time scale. If we said that a corporation, the time scale of a corporation to be productive and profitable is at 10 years, right? There's a 10-year plan. There's a 5-year, there's a 10-year. But let's say there's a 10-year plan. So the value of a corporation, let's just say for the sake of argument, is a 10-year. In 10 years, we will see this amount of growth. We will see this amount of new profit, revenue, these products, these services, right? That's what the leadership comes out, the visionaries. We have a 10-year plan, and these are the steps towards that plan. If a corporation's value, if a corporation's process is a 10-year model, and if a country's plan is like a 50-year model, right? It depends on the country, but a country, let's say, has a 50-year model. Then what's the model for a planet? And I suggest the model for a planet is more like 1,000-year. It's a 1,000-year model. Now, the immediate issues you start to have is, well, we can't think at the 1,000-year scale because we only live 100 years. And this is why we've never really approached this discussion. This is why, because as a human being, we barely live 100, probably 80, if you make it to 80. Now, if a country, because a country looks at generations, if a country makes a 50-year plan, then they're making plans for your children, right? A corporation, the 10-year plan, well, a corporation is just the 10 years, just the next CEO, the next president to come in. But a planet, so when I say a planet has a 1,000-year scale, a 1,000-year plan, that's hard for us to think because we only live 100 years. But there are 2 points. One is we have a history, an available history of 5,000 years. We have an available history of 5,000. Some anthropologists and researchers have gone beyond that into the 12 or 20,000 years. But, so some anthropologists and some geologists and some researchers have gone 20,000 years. But I would say safely we have a 5,000-year history. And so you can see the 5,000 years, what's been going on, and there's different ages. Different things have happened. So we could say that there have been these 5 plans, right? 5 1,000-year plans. So we have some idea of it if we look at history. Because even we don't live 1,000 years, the planet does. And our generations will continue to live. Children will produce more children. Historically speaking, there is a 5,000-year history. So it's not inconceivable. The second point is that there are some people, beings, that live more than 1,000 years. Again, this is something outside. Again, this is something outside of our ability to see. So it's understandable if people have a hard time processing this kind of information, and if we've never thought about this before. Now, you're going to ask, well, who owns the planet? Well, over the history, different owners have owned the planet. But like a large corporation, let's say these multinational corporations, we might know the CEO, we might know an investor, We might know the valuation, but even if you're an employee, a manager, you might not know who owns the company. You might not know who owns the company. And you might know one owner, but there are also private owners, anonymous owners. There are corporations, holding companies whose boards are private. So you might know the holding company. There might be a holding company to that holding company, to another holding company, to another company. So you may never know the owner. So within our perception, we don't always know the owner of a large corporation. And then when they sell, we might not know the ownership. Now, some companies, they're required to be transparent, but some companies are not. In the planetary sales business, we as citizens are not required to know the owners because it's well outside of our understanding and our ability to process. And it's not necessary for you to live your life to know who owns the planet. Now, who does own Earth? I don't know. I don't know who owns the Earth. But I know somebody owns it. Again, ownership does not mean the owners don't necessarily know the details. They don't necessarily have to come down here and see all the homeless people. They don't have to see all the corruption. They don't have to see all the happy children. That's not necessarily the owner's job. The owner just might own it on paper. There could be somebody, some group, some race that owns our planet on paper. And they have managers. They have galactic managers and overseers who will visit and make sure that the property is taken care of. And if you look at history, there are points in history where things didn't go so well. So you have to think, was there a change in ownership? Did the change in ownership change the leadership of the different nations? Right? The departments. There are 193 countries, right? Recognized countries, 193. And those are the departments. Now, when you own a planet, you own all these countries, all these departments, and they'll have managers called presidents, prime ministers, leaders, chairmans. Now, if I were to sell the planet to some other group, will there be this infighting, this play for power, this change of leadership? And if you look throughout, even in recent history, in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been major leaders who have been taken out, removed from office, charged, murdered, killed, major leaders. If you look at the year 2014, there's at least 15 or 16 nations the leadership changed power. Was there a change in ownership? Was there a change in the plan? Did the owner say, this isn't working out so well, we don't like what's happening, we're going to change the heads of the department, right? And that's within the purview of the leader, of the CEO of a company. They don't like certain managers, they don't like certain executives, they buy them out, they throw them out, they fire them, they get rid of them, attrition, retirement. There's every reason, every conceivable way. People just quit, or they just leave, or they move on, they retire, right? People are always changing within a corporation. So imagine a country, not a country, imagine now a planet. It's hard to It's hard to understand this level of thinking, which to me makes it important to discuss this so that we have time to process it, so that we have time to understand it, that somebody owns the planet. What is the value of a planet? Well, if it looks like a corporation, you base it on revenue. A planet's revenue, most of the time you look at GDP, gross domestic product, economic output. The GDP of the world, what's the GDP of the world? It's about $80 trillion. Now, if a corporation, let's say a corporation is based on the 10-year model, and the value of a corporation is based on revenue. And it's usually, let's say that as an example, a times revenue model. The value of your company is based on a certain multiple of your revenue, but on a 10-year scale. And companies, large corporations can sell for $20 billion, $50 billion. Now the world economic output is 80 trillion, but on a 1,000-year scale. A 1,000-year scale, which is the time scale, corporations is a 10-year scale. So the difference is 100 times. It's a multiple of 100. So if we said 100 times $80 trillion is like $8,000 trillion, or $8 quadrillion. It's a lot of money. The planet, if it was to be sold based on money, it would be this amount of money. You can sell a planet. You can sell a planet based on resources, based on technology, transfer of technology. I'll buy your planet. You transfer technology for the next 10 years. You transfer people for the next 10 years. You transfer resources and some money. So there's a kind of like a loan. You buy the planet, and you have to pay the previous owner some of your productivity, some of your people, some of your technology, right? There are many ways to buy it if we're going to use money or resources or financials. You can also pay for it using, other means that you siphon off money through the GDP, through corporate. You siphon off money between countries, right? Tariffs. If you charge tariffs, and you can siphon off billions of dollars, which would go to the owners, which would pay off, let's say you're paying off a loan. And to pay off a loan, you use tariffs, world tariffs on different countries. The tariffs could be, let's say, $200 billion. And some of that money will go to the owners, and on paper it looks like a tariff. Like, there's ways, since I don't do it, I don't know, but I'm giving you a speculative approach. You could pay off a planetary loan by shuffling money, hiding money, charging twice as much for something. There's different ways to do it, and good accountants will be able to do it. So there's different ways to purchase a planet. The value of a planet is going to be multiples of the GDP on a simple level. Let's say we're not doing any bartering. I'll give you my planet for your planet. Let's just say on the GDP model, $80 trillion, a multiple of that. Based on a 1,000-year scale, my suggestion would be something like $8,000 trillion outright selling price. And for that, you get 193 nations. You get 10 top performing nations. You get 6,000 languages. You get 7 billion people. 7 billion, think of the sales pitch. This planet here comes with 7 billion people. Most of them are not ascended. Most of them live a very rudimentary life. and most of them believe in some type of God. They'd be easy to control. We control them through the church. We've established a church system. We've established a medical system that keeps people unhealthy. We have government leaders who we totally control. We can spark an international war, military conflict whenever we want. We can spread disease. Right now we have a climate change hoax. We have a climate change psyop that's completely distorting world reality, and it's bringing us in X billions of dollars. You'll also like planet Earth because it's situated in this solar system next to a nice yellow star, which is going to burn for another 5 trillion years. And it's a lot of resources. You got gold, you got aluminum, you got boron, we got zinc, salt. Think of all the salt we have. And we have all these people and animals and trees. And it's got a perfectly intact atmosphere, fresh oxygen that you can siphon off. Not to mention the secret space program, the bases on the moon. So you can imagine the sales pitch for the Earth. Somebody owns the planet. There's a value to the planet. The people who own the planet are extremely advanced. They are extremely knowledgeable, advanced, and we may never know who they are because I doubt they're going to come here and say, we own your planet. I don't think people would take that very well. I don't think most people could understand that. By the same token, you work for a company and somebody owns it. You don't have a problem with that because you got a job. You come to the Earth to experience and learn. Somebody owns it. Should you care? As long as I can learn and experience, why should I care? Or should I care? So we have to put things in perspective. Because we have to put things in perspective. Because we work for corporations, we work for the government, and we get the benefit. We get health benefits, we get the benefit of a career, of having a job, of working with colleagues, of being able to do good things, and develop new products and use our abilities. It's an opportunity. The owner of a corporation wants to see success and profit. They want to see you happy, right? Because they want happy workforce is more productive. They stay longer, right? They want to retain good people, and that leads to more success. So the owner is not necessarily an evil person. It doesn't make you evil because you have power, because you have lots of money, or you can buy a planet. It doesn't make you evil. It doesn't make you anything, because you're providing an opportunity. A planet is a place for billions of people to live and experience. You can, from another planet, if you had an agreement, you could bring other people from other planets here, and they could learn, they could bring technology, they could bring ideas, they can bring advances in science and medicine. And if they look human, which most people do, you would never know they're from another system. And likewise, some of our people can go to the other system and they can share knowledge and ideas. And we could have, so once you expand your level of thinking, and that the planet, there's an owner, and it's a piece of, this large corporate real estate in space, then you start to think, well, there are other planets for sale. There are other planets that need to be developed. There are other planets that have no population and they need to be developed. They need infrastructure. And so some people would buy those, and they would spend thousands of years to terraform the planet. And then they would bring people to that planet. Our particular case, it's already terraformed. We have an atmosphere. We've been here for a bunch of thousands of years. and we're here to learn and grow, and somebody owns it. There's a value to it. Ultimately, it's a big decision. It takes a certain level of thinking to own a planet, because you're responsible for a lot of people, a lot of lives. It's a very spiritual endeavor. A human could not do it. It's a very large-scale thinking process. We're not there yet. People are going to have very diverse views on this kind of information. And that tells you what level they're at. And the level to get to where I'm saying it requires a new level of thinking. So somebody owns our planet. And we don't know when the last owner, when it was sold. It's just like a hockey team, a basketball team, somebody owns it. Who owns it? Maybe we'll find out one day. Maybe the new owner will come in and say, hey, right? You never know.